Good morning, Facebook. Welcome to Bringing the Zoo to You here at Brookfield Zoo. Thank you for joining us today and thank you for supporting us. My name is Craig. I'm an animal care specialist here at Wild Encounters, and today we're going to take our llamas for a little walk around the Christopher Plaza here at Wild Encounters as part of their training and let them kind of visit some of the other animals here. So here they come now. Coming up with our animal care specialist, Katie. This is one of our llamas. This is Cinnamon. She's 9 years old. Next we have with animal care specialist, Christy. This is Lucy, and she's 10 years old. She usually gets a little jumpy around that door, which is, normal for her. And then, of course, with animal care specialist, Adelina, this is our alpaca. And this is Osman, and he's just shy of 18 years old, so he's a little bit older. So we're going to let them kind of walk around. This is a little bit of a guided exploration for them. We're just going to let them kind of get used to, because they haven't been out in a little bit, so just get used to walking around, let them explore, look at everything, let them visit the goats, and check out the reindeer. But while we're doing that, we'll talk a little bit about llamas and alpacas, some of the differences. So as you're watching these guys, you'll see Cinnamon and Lucy are llamas, Osman is our alpaca, and the first thing you'll notice about the difference between them is probably their size. So llamas are quite a bit larger. Cinnamon probably weighs around 360 pounds, whereas Osman is only about 150. While he is a little bit older, he's a little bit skinnier than a younger alpaca would be. They typically only get to be about 200 pounds, the alpacas do. One of the other bigger differences you'll notice potentially is their ear shape. So llamas kind of have these kind of wonky looking ears, are like banana shaped, whereas the alpacas are kind of pointed. And they use those ears, it's kind of a way to communicate. You can kind of tell, if they're curious or if they're upset by the position of those ears. You see the goats like to visit the llamas. They're all pretty excited. All the llamas I don't think care that much. Osman does, he likes it. Another main difference between llamas and alpacas is their uses primarily. So these guys do come from South America. Llamas and alpacas are domesticated animals. Llamas are typically used for pack animals. They can carry quite a bit of weight, so they're good. You can load them up and kind of travel with them. Alpacas don't carry as much, so they're not usually used as a pack animal. Another thing that they're used for is their fur. Now, llama fur and alpaca fur are a little bit similar, but the alpaca fur is actually a better quality. So, but we do shear these guys. And then people that own alpacas and llamas will shear them and use their fur for making clothing and stuff like that. Again, the alpaca fur is a little bit higher quality, so that's why people would primarily raise these guys. And a neat thing about the alpaca is supposedly their fur is self-extinguishing, kind of like a brick. That's really cool. Yeah, he's just looking around. Again, of course, alpacas are also used as meat too. They can be raised for meat, but we don't want to eat Osman. Here at the zoo, when we shear them, we're about to shear them probably this month. We'll take that fur and we'll get it cleaned, and we use it as enrichment to give to some of our other animals, so they like to smell it and play in it and stuff like that. So llamas and alpacas, like I said, are domesticated, but there are wild, quote-unquote, llamas and alpacas, but they're actually called guanacos and vicuñas, respectively. So a guanaco is like the wild equivalent to a llama, and while they're pretty much the same animal, there are actually some differences, primarily in size too. So llamas are actually still quite a bit larger than a guanaco, which would be in the wild. And their fur color is a little bit different too. So as you look at Cinnamon and Lucy, they do have a bit different fur color. Cinnamon's white and a bit speckled, and Lucy's kind of like a half white, half brown thing. But a guanaco out in the wild, they typically kind of have the same coloration, in which their back and top half is just kind of like a tan color, and the bottom half is like white, and then their face is actually kind of have like a dark coloration, like a black or a gray face. Now the alpaca and the vicuña, again, one's a wild and one's domestic. but they're equivalent. But there is a little bit difference too. Now the vicuñas are actually a bit bigger in the wild than the alpacas here, and they actually have a little bit nicer quality fur too. So as we're walking around, Cinnamon here is kind of the more confident animal of the three. She is the leader of the group, so you'll see a lot of times she's pretty comfortable just kind of doing her thing and walking around, but she also does kind of take charge of the other two. So if Cinnamon's upset, the other two are probably going to be upset too. So, and what they'll tend to do is if they see something that makes them a little nervous, they'll actually look to see how the leader responds to it as well. But in our case, a lot of times when we're walking them, if they see something or hear something that spooks them, they actually look to the trainer that's walking them. And if we just kind of keep walking and don't react, they're a little bit more likely to be like, okay, that's not that bad, we can keep going. Leo's just watching everybody walking around. Coming up over here, they're visiting with the reindeer now, and our reindeer and llama actually live pretty close together. Their exhibits are adjacent to each other, so they're pretty used to seeing each other. Josie here up in the front, she's very curious, but she also notices her keepers too. We do train the reindeer similarly to how we train the llama, so when we come walking up, the reindeer kind of get excited as well.
Do you want some questions?
We can do some questions. Yeah.
What do they eat?
What do they eat? So the llamas primarily eat hay, alfalfa. They do get a grain. It's not a very large quantity, but this grain kind of acts as some of that other stuff that they would normally get in the wild that they don't get just from the hay. So they do get a little bit of grain, and that's what we're using for training as well, because they really like that stuff. So they're willing to work for it. But they also get some oats. They like the oats a lot too when we train. And as you watch Cinnamon, she does like to kind of taste the local cuisine in the Wild Encounters area. Now this stuff is all safe for her to eat. So she likes to kind of come smell everything and like, okay, I want to eat this. And she actually eats a lot of the stuff here. And Lucy will kind of pick at some of it too. But that's how you can tell that Cinnamon's comfortable as well. That she's doesn't really care what's going on. She's willing to eat. She's willing to put her head down to the ground and look for food, and that's something that in the wild would normally leave them vulnerable. So like an animal that's not very comfortable won't put their head down, because then they can't, they won't be able to see if there's anything coming. So you can tell that's how Cinnamon's comfortable. She's willing to just walk around and eat everything.
Good. How long can they live?
Llamas and alpacas can live quite a long time. I'd say a good range would be 15 to 20 years. And so Osman, we do consider pretty old at 18 years old. So we do notice some, age-related stuff. He is a little skinny, so we do make sure he gets a lot of food. But otherwise, he's really healthy still. And our llamas are about middle age, so.
Speaking of Osman, how does he see through all that fur?
He does not. No, he does. So, fun story. When we got Osman, when we opened Wild Encounters, his hair was so long and his bangs, he used to do a really neat hair flip to kind of flip it back so he could see. He can see pretty okay, but we do shear him coming up, probably this month when the weather's a little bit warmer. So we will cut his hair short enough so that he's comfortable in the summertime, but long enough, or leave it long enough so that by the time winter comes back, he'll have enough fur growing back that he stays warm in the winter. But we will trim his bangs too. I always really want to style his hair, but he doesn't like it.
Let's see.
So some of the behaviors that we do with these guys, aside from walking, everything that we do is choice-based here. So we don't, aside from Osman, who's kind of comfortable with us just putting the halter on him, we don't put the halters on the llamas. We let them come and put their face through, showing us that they're making the choice to wear the halter and go for a walk with us. So it's kind of a weird position that we stand, but we hold the halter kind of out away from us, and Cinnamon will come in and put her face into the loop there, and that's her showing us that we can bring it around and clip it. Now, if she pulled back in any way at that point, we would let her go. We wouldn't force her into the halter, and we'd let her try again until either she decided to make that choice or she does not. And with the choice-based training, it does make it a little difficult sometimes if we really need to get Cinnamon out, but she's choosing not to. But we always have a backup plan for that. And then, of course, if she chooses not to halter, then she just doesn't get the special treat for that training session. If it is her diet item, she wouldn't get her diet item at that point, but we would feed her much later in the day so she doesn't associate those two things. But aside from that, our llamas do some really neat behavior. Cinnamon and Lucy are both trained to give kisses. Cinnamon is comfortable with being petted. Cinnamon has also been trained to pick up and recycle a bottle, so she'll actually grab it with her mouth to demonstrate their neat adaptation of the split lips, and she'll drop it into a little tub, although she's using her target here. Lucy is trained to do a really fun selfie behavior, which is really cool for Lucy because she came to us as an adult that had never been around humans, so she took a long time to build that trust with us, quite a few years actually. But now her selfie behavior would actually be, we stand with our back to her and we hold our phone up, and Lucy will put her head on your shoulder and hold it there until you bridge and say good.
Selfie. Good.
It's really cool. Osman, on the other hand, we're comfortable. He's not the most comfortable with us, but as long as he's willing to come up and participate and he's comfortable enough walking around with us, we bring him out just so he's out with the girls. And all he cares about is being with them and not being alone. So as long as he's comfortable being out here, just walking around and being a good boy, then that's all we ask of him too. And he is really cute, so we do like to bring him out and talk about him as well.
Do they make any noises?
They do make some noises. So primarily, they actually all have a different sound too. So it's almost like their own voice. They don't vocalize a lot, but Cinnamon will kind of make a moaning sound when she's a little bit nervous. Lucy's, again, we would call it a moaning sound, but it sounds quite a bit different. But I think it means the same thing. And then Osman's is pretty funny. He gets really stressed. When he gets really stressed out, he goes like, woo! Like, and then we all laugh at him a little bit and try and make him feel better. But it's really funny. But otherwise, the other sound you might hear is them actually attempting to spit on each other. And so, like you've probably heard, llamas and alpacas, camels, which they're related to, they all spit. They're more likely to spit on each other than on a human, but as care specialists who work closely with these animals, we've both been the collateral damage and the target of llama and alpaca spit. It's disgusting. But it's funny too, because a way you can tell when we come out to do training, we can see it from across the exhibit or from across the plaza. We could tell when they've been spitting on each other because they make this really derpy face. We call it sour mouth, and it's because like the spit that they're bringing up tastes so bad that after they're spitting on each other, they leave their mouth open and kind of dangling, and they look really, really funny. But they've been spitting like so much at each other that they make that face. It's pretty funny.
Can you explain the self-extinguishing hair fur again?
Again, I mean, I've never seen it in action, but it's kind of like if you were to try and light a brick on fire. It might catch for like a second and it puts out instantly. So they say that an alpaca's fur is similar to that. Again, I haven't lit an alpaca on fire, so and I wouldn't do that. But it's something that's like I'd like to actually look into more because it is a really neat fact.
Where did the llamas come from? How did they end up at the zoo?
So both of these llamas came from a farm that was in the area. Cinnamon came when she was very young. If you've been here before we had Wild Encounters, you would have seen Cinnamon in our children's zoo. And Osman too. Osman came from a private donor. So when we closed the children's zoo to open Wild Encounters, Cinnamon and Osman went to a holding facility. And during that about a year, or maybe a little longer than a year's time, Cinnamon met Lucy and they bonded. So when it was time to open this and bring back our llama and alpacas, they actually decided they didn't want to separate Lucy and Cinnamon, so Lucy came with. And but again, because Cinnamon was comfortable with us, so she's very good with working with us and being trained. Lucy was not. She'd never been haltered until the day they haltered her to bring her here. So she wouldn't come anywhere near us. So over the years that we've been open, it's been a lot of trust building with her. And although we still have a hard time getting the halter on her voluntarily, she's come a long way, as you might have seen Christy demonstrate the selfie behavior. There's no way Lucy would have come anywhere near us to put her head on our shoulder when we first got her. And so we've, with years of work with her, she's become a pretty confident animal, and she's pretty trusting with us.
Can you remind us where llamas and alpacas originate from?
They come from South America, and they do have a little bit of a different range. The well, I guess the vicuñas and the guanacos, but they come from higher altitudes, and they're really good at climbing. If you look down at their feet are a little bit different from other hoofstock animals. You'd say that their feet aren't actually hooves per se, but they are two toes with foot pads underneath. And they're actually pretty good at climbing and jumping and walking around. And again, they are related to camels, so if you were to see them really walking, you'd see that they walk like camels too, and that they move both left legs at the same time and then both right legs at the same time when they get a real good pace going, especially if they were running.
How fast can they run?
That's a great question. Numbers wise, off the top of my head, I don't remember the number. They can go pretty quick though, but again, they're not really used for speed. They're used for their carrying capability and for like their endurance. So we don't really get them running too much, but we do like to walk them around. And people, again, they use them as animals that carry things for them, so pack animals.
What do they feel like? Are they coarse? Are they soft?
They're pretty soft, although our llamas don't really like us brushing them. So as you can see, they are covered in like straw and bark chips and stuff like that. So our llamas they don't feel as soft as a llama that you would brush regularly. And then if you were to pet both of them, they are pretty soft. But if you pet Osman when he's not caked in substrate, he's actually quite a bit softer. And now there's actually two subspecies of alpaca too that might look a little different. And we used to have another alpaca here who I think might have been potentially different from Osman. So you have one subspecies that have that kind of floofy, poofy fur that you might see, the really cute ones. And then there's another one that have kind of the long, shaggy fur. And Osman definitely, like when we let his fur grow out, it's kind of shaggy looking. So I imagine they might have been a different subspecies.
Are you saying Osman is not cute?
Oh, Osman's very cute. I think he looks like Michael Cera. I don't know, should we say that on Facebook? He does sometimes. It's funny. Like a celebrity. Well, you know how they have celebrities that look like an alpaca and they have side-by-sides. I think if he had to look like a celebrity, that's who he would look like.
Okay, Craig.
Yes.
What kind of enrichment do they get?
We give them, for enrichment, they like food enrichment. Lucy really likes a lot of produce, but we'll try different things that's safe for them to eat in small quantities. We do different browse as well, but we also try and put novel items in there. Like we have like these big weeble wobble things that we might put a scent on, or some peanut butter or some kind of food like that that'll try and entice them over. We can put big fake rocks or like boomer balls or stuff like that in there too. But we try and give them something novel every day, whether it's a scented item or a food item or just some kind of big new toy. Oh, there's a kiss.
Can you remind us again how long they live?
They can live typically 15 to 20 years, and there's some outliers. Again, Osman's a little bit older. He's 18 years old, so he's up there, but he's still nice and healthy and active.
How often do they go for walks like this?
We use them for summer programming when during normal operations. A couple times a week we try. But it depends on what the need is and what the training session is and what the time the keepers have. So we do train them almost every single day, but we don't walk them all the time because we don't want them to get burnt out of that. And again, like I said, we do choice-based training. So if we walk them all the time, Cinnamon might get kind of fed up with that and decide not to join us for these walks. And of course, if Cinnamon says no, that usually means the other two aren't allowed to go as well. So we have to make sure Cinnamon's happy. But we try a couple walks a week or so, and we do the same with like our reindeer too, and some of our other animals that we take for walks.
So we've seen that the animal care specialists are holding up different objects for them, flat objects.
Yes.
What are those for?
Those are their targets. So we are working on some shape discrimination station training using those targets too. So that's why Katie's with Cinnamon is a triangle, and don't get too close to Cinnamon.
Oh yeah,
just
sorry.
in case. And then Lucy's is a blue circle. Well, not that the color matters, but they have different shapes. So that way we can hopefully teach them that it doesn't matter which trainer comes in, whoever's holding the triangle, that's who Cinnamon goes to. But now we're also using those targets as a target. Cinnamon remote targets. We can throw it across the yard and she'll go target to it and then come back for a reinforcement. She also practices her recycling behavior with that target too. So Katie would hold it out and say retrieve, and Cinnamon will grab it with her mouth and then hold onto it until Katie says recycle, and then she'll turn her head to wherever the bucket is and drop it at that point. So we use it for a lot of different things, but primarily, initially it was just a target.
So how long do they sleep? When do they sleep? How do they sleep?
They're awake a lot during the day while we're here. I'd say they probably spend most of the night sleeping, and they sleep, depending on the temperature, either in their stalls or they might sleep out in the stars. I'd say they probably kind of sleep most of the night, and then like partway through the day they'll probably be out here napping too. And they can either sleep on their side, or they'll kind of cush down and they'll sleep in a sternal position.
So do they ever sleep standing up like a horse?
Not really.
So more like a camel.
More like a camel.
Okay.
Again, closely related.
And how much do they weigh?
Cinnamon weighs about 370 pounds, so she's actually and that's typical of the animal who would be the alpha or the leader. Lucy probably weighs 50 pounds or so less than that, and Osman weighs about 150 pounds, so he's that's typical of an alpaca, the size difference between the llama and alpaca. All right, well, I think that's it. I think Cinnamon's probably going to keep going, but I think Osman and Lucy would be done soon. So we're going to end the walk here. Again, thank you for joining us, for bringing the zoo to you here at Brookfield Zoo, and thank you for supporting us. Have a wonderful day.